Hey, what's up, family? How's it going? It is Sunday night. It's your boy Tony here, and here's my take for the night. As you all know, we have been following the Florida shooting and just really the fallout from it, so that's pretty much what I'm going to talk about tonight. There's a few statements that have come from Rush Limbaugh, also Mayim Bialik from Big Bang Theory that I really wanted to cover. Just to kind of take a broader look, we do this all the time. We have these conversations as Americans, as citizens of this great country, to just try and figure out what the root cause is. And it always seems to come down to the same thing. As Emma Gonzalez, one of the students at the high school in which this most recent shooting took place, brings up. So I'm looking at this Huffington Post article that I'm reading, and basically she said, the article says, shooting survivor to Trump, shame lawmakers who take NRA money, not the Florida community. And I have a quote: to every politician who is taking donations from the NRA, shame on you. Those are her words specifically. And so the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School student Emma Gonzalez refuted President Donald Trump's suggestion that her community didn't take action to prevent a shooter from killing 17 at the school in a fiery Saturday speech. Politicians who take money from the NRA should feel ashamed, Gonzalez said, ending her address with, "We call BS." There's one tweet that I would like to call attention to, Gonzalez said at a rally at Fort Lauderdale Federal Courthouse before reading the president's February 15th Twitter post that stressed people should have reported bad and erratic behavior to authorities. And she basically says that they did over and over again. And we've also heard that the FBI got those reports and that they did not act. So I wanted to play some of her speech. Let's give it a quick listen.
About mass shootings in America, but because, just as David said, we are going to be the last mass shooting. Just like Tinker v. Des Moines, we are going to change the law. That's going to be Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in that textbook, and it's all going to be due to the tireless effort of the school board, the faculty members, the family members, and most importantly, the students. The students who are dead, the students still in the hospital, the students who are now suffering from PTSD, the students who had panic attacks during the vigil because the helicopters who wouldn't leave us alone, hovering over the school 24 hours a day. There has been one tweet that I would like to call attention to. So many signs that the Florida shooter was mentally disturbed, even expelled for bad and erratic behavior. Neighbors and classmates knew he was a big problem, must always report such instances to authorities again and again. We did, time and time again. Since he was in middle school, it was no surprise to anyone who knew him to hear that he was the shooter. Those talking about how we should have not ostracized him, you didn't know this kid. Okay, we did. We know that they're claiming that there are mental health issues, and I am not a psychologist, but we need to pay attention to the fact that this isn't just a mental health issue. He wouldn't have harmed that many students with a knife.
And so I'll end her speech there for now, because again, what she's talking about is she's speaking complete truth, and this is a high school student talking about these issues, and it's a shame that these young children under the age of 18 have to go through this. So I first start off by applauding Emma for being able to stand up and speak in front of all these people, to speak her mind and her beliefs, and to stand up to, you know, the folks like the Donald Trumps and all the congressmen that are taking money. It's a touchy subject, because here you have these congressmen, these politicians that get this money, and then on the same token, when these things happen, they're the ones that are saying out thoughts and prayers, as if that has, you know, any impact on keeping these things from happening. And I'm not saying that gun control is the be-all end-all issue. As Rush Limbaugh says, and I'm going to read some of his quotes, the next possible shooter already has the gun picked out that he wants to use. So here's what Limbaugh has to say. Limbaugh suggests armed security is the only answer to mass shootings at schools. So conservative talk radio star Rush Limbaugh on Sunday returned to the argument that allowing concealed weapons in classrooms, not only demonstrations or blaming the NRA, is the way to stop school shootings, speaking 3 days after 17 people were killed in a Florida high school. And I want to know what you guys think. Should we allow concealed weapons in classrooms and really in all public places? I don't think there should be concealed weapons. I think there's some credence to this plan, but I don't think they should be concealed. I think what we need, and unfortunately I hate saying this, is like some sort of a militarized state. And the fact that you need to have police officers stationed at any place of gathering, and they need to have the superior firepower. Because unfortunately, I don't know how you stop some of these things from happening. Now, how do you stop someone like the Las Vegas shooter, who was perched atop in a hotel, firing down on people in the dark? I don't know. But if you have a lot of trained police in that area, who are trained to hear where that gunfire is coming from, I don't know. Maybe they can shoot in that direction, but no, maybe more people will die. I really do not know. This is like. And I think this is why the media likes to really harp on when these school shootings happen. This is why they show up, but they only last for a week, because after a while people get tired of hearing about it and the argument. But no one can figure out the right answer. And I don't think attacking Congresspersons that get NRA funding is the answer as well. So I'll talk about that too. But so Limbaugh goes on to say, the solution is we need concealed carry in schools. We need a mechanism to be defensive. It's better to have mechanisms in schools to stop it when it breaks out. And again, I don't think it needs to be concealed carry. If you're going to have people with guns, let the guns be seen. That way, if a student is even thinking about going and shooting up a school, once they see that, oh, there's a policeman that has a gun, and that if I go in there, I'm probably not even going to be nearly, not going to be successful at all, that might actually start to keep students from making these attacks. At least the broad daylight attacks. The ones where they walk into movie theaters or schools and think that, they can shoot places up. But I don't know how you get enough police officers or security officers to be stationed in every single movie theater, at every single school, and every single classroom to provide that level of security. Maybe what people want to happen is to see a privatized army be raised up in America to help the police out. I don't know. Conspiracy theorists, please comment. Please chime in there. So this is not the first time the idea of having security guards or perhaps teachers carry guns has been raised, with Limbaugh and others arguing that a shooter could be stopped more quickly compared to having to wait for armed police officers and tactical units to arrive. We have armed security at every public entity except schools, Limbaugh says, and that's not true. I mean, you don't have armed security at churches. You don't have it at malls per se. You don't really have it at shopping centers. You have hired mall security and whatever they might have. But every restaurant, when you think about public entities, think about every single place you go. There's not armed security in those areas. There's not armed security at Chili's, that's for sure. So Limbaugh spoke minutes after 5 students who survived last week's shooting at a Parkland, Florida high school said they are organizing a nationwide demonstration on March 24th to draw attention to the issue, which includes calls for tougher gun purchase laws. And I'm not sure if it's March 24th. I'm guessing it is, because February 24th is next Saturday. So I'm not sure exactly if that date is right. They're very articulate, Limbaugh said of the students. You have to feel for them. But anybody really serious about solving this couldn't care less about the gun angle. The next shooter is out there and probably has the gun he is going to use. And that's very true. I mean, the gun control at this point is ad hoc. After the Vegas shooting happened, we saw gun companies' stocks rise. Because basically what happens is every single time the gun control argument comes up, more people go out and buy guns. And then those guns end up in the wrong hands. So every time this happens, it just gets magnified. Gun control is not going to stop it because everyone already has guns. And the people that really want to hurt people already have the guns, and they're just laying them out, apparently. Congress has been widely criticized for not passing legislation that attempts to change Second Amendment rights on gun ownership, with much of the argument being that Republican lawmakers are afraid to pass such legislation for fear of losing re-election at the hands of the powerful gun rights lobby. And there's even a video by Mayim Bialik, which I'll just play in the background here on mute. Let me pause this. So there goes Rush. So basically Mayim Bialik, she's again also voicing, pretty much the same concerns that Emma brought up, that, despite video games, despite mental health issues, the common denominator is that people continue to get their hands on guns. And if we can just control that, then the violence will stop. And if we can get to the NRA and stop them from influencing politicians, then that will be the cure. That'll be what we need to finally have a safe and secure America for everybody. And again, I just don't believe that. And the main reason why I don't believe that is when you look at the amount of funding that a lot of these congressmen get, the guy who got the most funding from the NRA is John McCain, and it was $7.7 million. And then Richard Burr, from the congressman from North Carolina, $6.9 million. Roy Blunt from Missouri, $4.5 million. This isn't a lot of money. This isn't a lot of money at all. And I even looked up, how much money my congressmen in Michigan get. It's not a lot of money at all. I mean, look at these numbers. 4,000, 5,000, 7,000, 24,000. And if you want to check this out, you can go to Washington, the Washington Post. They have all these numbers. You can pick on your state and see all the congressmen, which I believe pretty much most of them are Republican, and see how much money they've received. Again, it's not a lot of money. And so I tried to follow this and see, if it's not that much money, then what's going on here? How's the NRA so powerful? And I found this Vox article that basically says the NRA is a powerful political force, but it's not because of money. Liberals say Congress can't pass gun control because it's bought by the NRA, but they're wrong. And this is a Vox article that I'm reading from. So it says the National Rifle Association donates millions of dollars every year to Republican lawmakers in Congress, and those same Republicans line up uniformly to block proposed gun control legislation. The implication of these two facts appears obvious. Politicians are refusing to stem the bloodshed of gun violence because they're getting what amounts to a legal bribe from lobbyists. Indeed, this familiar refrain was widely echoed again after the massacre on the Las Vegas Strip that killed more than 50 people and injured hundreds more in the wake of the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. And it wasn't just politicians, observers all over the place pushed this narrative. Jimmy Kimmel suggested that the NRA had the GOP's balls in a money clip. A columnist with the Los Angeles Times wrote that fistfuls of NRA money explained why America can't control guns. One big reason the latest gun bills failed is that gun rights groups have in recent years given much more money to sympathetic politicians that gun control advocates have, wrote the Rolling Stone. But when you talk to experts who study the way money influences our political system, they say this account is wrong, or at least often badly oversimplified. The NRA may exert a massive and real influence on Washington, D.C., but its campaign contributions can't possibly be the corrupting agent single-handedly thwarting meaningful action on gun control, as many of the analyses above suggest. And they say we can't come completely close to And they say we can come pretty close to proving it. So how do we know that gun control isn't crushed by NRA money? If you wanted to cook up a perfect laboratory experiment to test whether the NRA's donations really bought blanket opposition to gun control, you want to try neutralizing the effect of NRA money on a politician's campaign coffers. To do that, you could eliminate corruption's contributions to Congress. Or you could create a counterweight group that would match NRA funding to campaigns of lawmakers who decide to instead support gun control. So in this example, if I wanted to sway Fred Upton from supporting gun control, I should just give him $7,000, at least $7,000, right? Or maybe $14,000, maybe $21,000. Who knows? Maybe he'll still take my money and still, get the $7,000 from the NRA. Who knows? Luckily, we don't have to. Let me just see where I am. So it says, this Vox article continues and says, luckily we don't have to imagine what that second route would look like. Someone's already trying it. So back in 2014, former New York City mayor and billionaire media magnate Michael Bloomberg started Every Town for Gun Safety. And it's actually something that Mayim Bialik talks about in her video. Its goal was as clear as its method: get gun control passed by erasing politicians' financial incentives to stick by the NRA. Those who favor gun control convinced enough elements of the donor community that the problem was money, said Matt Grossman, a political scientist at the Michigan State University, in an interview. They went about trying to solve that problem by matching the gun rights lobby's funding. 2 years later, and the shifting financial landscape hasn't changed much, America still can't enact meaningful gun legislation. So obviously money is not the answer here. Michael Bloomberg offering to give money to Republicans hypothetically makes a clear case, added Lee Drutman, a senior fellow at the think tank New America and the author of several books on money and politics. If the theory is that they're selling their votes to the highest bidder, it has to be something else. It's not to say every town is a failure or close to it. Every town has provided a platform for the cause of gun reform, and it has worked to help craft legislation with some centrist Republicans, including Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey, who proposed an ultimately doomed compromise to the current Senate fight. It's also been effective at working with local lawmakers and shepherding through gun legislation at a state level. And that's where I think things have to change. They're going to have to change at the state level, at your local level. Talking to your local senator, your local state senator, and asking them, hey, what are we doing about this? What are we doing about, gun control? How can we make our community safer? But in terms of breaking Republican senators' opposition to gun control, the organization's influx of countervailing money just hasn't made the difference. There's not much to show for it, Grossman says. So NRA funding reflects a tiny fraction of the Republican funding apparatus. Shortly after Senator Chris Murphy's 15-hour filibuster on gun control, the Washington Post published a graphic about how the NRA has donated close to $4 million to congressional races since 1998. Only $4 million since 1998. That's 20 years. That sure sounds like a lot, but it's really not. When you really look at how that money fits into the grand scheme of congressional fundraising, it looks much less likely to actually be playing a crucial role. One of the most prominent critics of Democrats' gun control measure was Texas Senator John Cornyn, a Republican and reliable NRA ally since before his 2002 election. The NRA has given Cornyn about $30,000 over the past decade. In 2014, the NRA gave him $9,900, more than it gave to any other Republican senator that election cycle. But it was a drop in his much bigger ocean of donations. In 2014, he raised $14 million, including $57,000 from Exxon alone. The NRA was nowhere near his top 15 biggest donor contributors. All of the money the NRA has given Cornyn for more than a decade might pay for about 1% of his fundraising for one election cycle, and Cornyn is one of the biggest recipients of NRA cash in Congress. Overall, though, the NRA does help pump money into outside spending groups. Republican lawmakers could fund their campaigns just fine if the NRA bowed out. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, the NRA gave close to $1 million to Republican senators' PACs in 2014, or about 1% of the $67 million they raised that year. In the broader scheme of things, it's not that much money. So when I see things and when I hear people saying, stop taking money from the NRA, blah, 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 you're being bought out by them. No, they're not. Because they could just as well not have that extra $7,000 or $1 million, what have you, and they would still do just fine and dandy with, you know, where they are with whatever other money they're getting from other supporters. So research shows money doesn't factor in the highest priority congressional votes. Money does have real influence on policymaking in Washington, but it doesn't tend to change how politicians vote on big, high-profile issues that garner national attention, according to the political scientists. There's a whole lot of evidence on the relationship of money and politics. And the least persuasive evidence is that you can buy vote on final passage of legislation on issues of high public importance, Grossman says. Some people, including Donald Trump, like to imagine that the campaign finance system creates a quid pro quo in which businesses are transactionally rewarded for their gifts. Instead, the money has two key but subtler effects. It systematically elevates the priorities of the rich by forcing politicians to spend more time with them than they do with the poor. And number two, it helps businesses grease the legislative wheel. The second one tends to apply primarily to issues well out of the public eye. Drupman likened campaign donations to bringing a nice bottle of wine to an exclusive dinner party. The wine won't itself get you through the door, but it may help you strike up a conversation you wouldn't have been able to have otherwise. Now, Drupman acknowledges there's a meaningful argument that Republicans and their voters have come to be pro-gun in part because of the influence of the NRA's money. But the donations themselves are clearly not the reason Republican lawmakers fear opposing the NRA. The much bigger threat the gun rights group poses is its ability to mobilize and excite huge numbers of voters, our fellow people that live right next door to us and support having guns and don't support stricter gun control laws. The way you rise up in Republican politics is by supporting gun rights issues. And you do that because there are a lot of Republican voters in the coalition who care very deeply about gun rights. And that's really the crux of it all. Of course, none of this means that it wouldn't be good to try to root money out of politics. It just means that doing so would lead to the sweeping gun control so many liberals hope is only being held back by our campaign finance system. So a long Vox article, but again, I hope it kind of gives a little bit more insight into the argument that the reason why Republicans don't push for gun control is because of the NRA. It's not because of the NRA. It's because of people that love their guns more than the world itself. And they don't want anybody. They don't want the government. They don't want nobody to tell them what and how they can purchase their guns and where and when they can use them. And unfortunately, those are the people that we need to be talking to. Those are the people that we need to, get out onto the streets and ask, why won't you allow, why are you part of the NRA? Maybe, gosh, why am I saying this? I shouldn't say this. Maybe we need to hack the NRA database and find out all the people who are in it and just go door to door and say, look, can you stop supporting the NRA? I don't know. Just strike that from the video. But seriously, it's not your congressman. It's not the president of the United States. By gosh, it's definitely not President Trump. You can't blame Trump for anything. And if you are, then you might as well blame Obama all the time. Because regardless of what Obama would say about these things, nothing happened. He wasn't able to push any legislation. He wasn't, they can't do anything on their own. And obviously, these politicians can't do anything on their own. They just know how to pander to the people that vote for them. So unless we start talking to our neighbors, and unless we start, becoming more vigilant, as Trump said in his tweet, we're going to keep seeing these things happen. So that's all I've got on this issue. I know I've talked a whole lot, but I did want to end on a high note. As you all do notice, I'm wearing my Penn State hat. Yes, thank you very much, Mayim. I didn't mean to mute you throughout that entire video. Can I escape out of here? I probably can't. All right, there we go. So again, if you're interested, everytown.org. If you really want to try to fight money with money, everytown.org has a website. You can donate money to help end gun violence that way. But again, money is not the answer. money does speak volumes. So I think unless you're spending like 4 times more, or giving your politician like 4 times as much money that they're getting from the NRA to say, hey, stop supporting the NRA, or maybe 5 times more, I don't know. I don't know how much it takes to actually buy them out. But the real issue is our neighbors dotted across the nation that truly believe that there should not be stricter gun control laws. So again, don't want to talk too much. I did want to talk about something positive real quick, since I'm on like my 25th minute. This is going to be a really long video. I don't know if a lot of people know about Thon. It's a Penn State Dance Marathon, which raises money for the research of solving and eliminating pediatric cancer. And this year, what basically happens is every weekend in February, or every year, there's one weekend in February where the students of Penn State will pretty much dance for 48 hours straight. And it's really a culmination of efforts to fundraise. And this year, the fundraising amount was, drum roll please, $10 million. You probably can't see that. But yes, they raised just over $10 million, $10,151,663. So to go towards researching and finding a cure for pediatric cancer. So I thought that was awesome. And then the final video I'd like to leave you all with some of the dance moves by the Penn State dance team. So I will leave you with that. Let me know what you guys think about gun control, about money and gun control. Other than that, I will see you all tomorrow. Roll the clip.